He slammed his fist against the wall, screaming that I wasn't leaving this house. The smell of whiskey on his breath mixed with the metallic taste of blood in my mouth. For 14 years, I'd lived in this hell disguised as a home, but as his final punch landed, sending me crashing into the table, a knock echoed through the silence. That knock changed everything, because this time, I wasn't the helpless girl he'd terrorized for years. This time, I had proof, and the neighbor at the door. He was about to witness the beginning of my stepfather's end. My name is Natalie Brooks, and this morning I made breakfast for the last time in the house that was supposed to be my home. The kitchen smelled of scrambled eggs and burnt toast, a familiar combination that had marked countless mornings over the past 14 years. My hands moved mechanically, setting 3 plates on the worn wooden table while dawn light filtered through yellowed curtains. Outside, the neighborhood was just beginning to wake, dogs barking, cars starting, normal people beginning normal days. I wasn't normal anymore, hadn't been since I was 13. The coffee maker gurgled its final drops as I heard those footsteps, heavy, deliberate, each one a small earthquake that made my spine straighten involuntarily. Mark Ellison, my stepfather, former Marine, current monster. The floorboards creaked under his weight as he entered the kitchen, bringing with him the stench of last night's whiskey and this morning's cigarettes. "Morning," he grunted, dropping into his chair with the authority of a king claiming his throne. His gray eyes, still bloodshot from drinking, swept over the table before settling on me. Even at 7 in the morning, there was that edge to him, the coiled violence that lived just beneath his skin. My mother, Karen, shuffled in moments later, her bathrobe wrapped tight, eyes carefully avoiding both of us. She'd perfected the art of being invisible in her own home, of not seeing what she didn't want to see. Her hand trembled slightly as she poured coffee, the liquid sloshing dangerously close to the rim. "Natalie has a double shift at the hospital today," she offered into the silence, her voice thin as paper. Mark's fork scraped against his plate. "That's so," I nodded, not trusting my voice yet. St. Laura Medical Center had been my sanctuary for 3 years now. 12-hour shifts that meant 12 hours away from this house, away from him. The other nurses thought I was dedicated. They didn't know I was just desperate. "You've been working a lot of doubles lately," Mark observed, his tone deceptively casual. His jaw worked as he chewed, the muscle twitching in that way that meant his temper was already simmering. "Hope you're not getting any ideas." "Ideas, like leaving, like freedom, like the apartment lease hidden in my work locker, signed and ready for tomorrow." "Just picking up extra shifts," I replied, keeping my voice neutral, submissive. "The hospital needs coverage." He studied me for a long moment, and I forced myself to meet his gaze. Looking away was weakness, and weakness was blood in the water to him. The scar above his left eyebrow, earned in Afghanistan, he claimed, though I'd learned not to believe his war stories, twitched slightly. "Good," he finally said, returning to his eggs. "This family needs the money. Your mother's pills don't pay for themselves. My mother's pills. The anxiety medication she'd started taking 3 years after marrying him. The sleeping pills that helped her not hear the sounds that came from my room some nights. The antidepressants that couldn't fix what was really broken in this house." I stood to clear my barely touched plate, and that's when Mark's hand shot out, gripping my wrist. Not hard enough to leave marks. He'd learned to be careful about visible bruises after a coworker had asked questions once, but firm enough to make his point. "Where are you going?" "To get ready for work." My voice stayed steady, though my pulse hammered against his thumb. "You didn't eat?" "I'm not hungry." His grip tightened incrementally. Waste of food. Ungrateful. The word hung between us, heavy with years of accusation. Ungrateful for the roof over my head. Ungrateful for the man who'd stepped up to raise another man's child. Ungrateful for the discipline, The structure, the rules that were really just different words for control. "I'm sorry," I said, the words automatic, meaningless. He released me, and I moved to the sink, running water over my plate to hide the shaking in my hands. Behind me, I heard him stand, his chair scraping against linoleum. "I'll be at the warehouse until 6, he announced. "Dinner better be ready when I get home." "Yes," my mother whispered. His footsteps receded, and only when I heard his truck engine roar to life did I allow myself to breathe fully. My mother remained at the table, staring into her coffee cup like it held the answers to questions she'd never ask. "Mom," I started. "You should get ready for work," she interrupted, still not looking at me. "You don't want to be late." I wanted to scream, to shake her, to make her see what she'd been deliberately blind to for over a decade. Instead, I walked to my room, past the family photos that lined the hallway, Mark in his marine dress blues, my mother in white at their courthouse wedding, me at 13 with eyes that hadn't yet learned to hide the fear. Tomorrow, I told myself, closing my bedroom door behind me. Tomorrow I would leave this house and never look back. I didn't know then that tonight would bring everything to its breaking point. The first time Mark hit me, I was 13 years old and had forgotten to wash his coffee mug. It wasn't even a real hit, just a sharp cuff to the back of my head that made my eyes water. My mother saw it happen from the doorway, her face frozen in that moment between shock and acceptance. "Mark's just teaching you responsibility," she said later, rubbing my head with trembling fingers. "He's a good man. He came from the war different, but he's trying." The war. Always the war. Every outburst, every flash of rage, every night he came home drunk, it all traced back to Afghanistan, to the things he'd seen, the brothers he'd lost. His PTSD was a ghost that haunted our house, an excuse that covered every sin like a government-issued blanket. I learned quickly that Mark's discipline came in phases. Like the moon. First came the honeymoon, a week, maybe 2, where he'd be almost normal. He'd watch TV with us, tell stories about his squad, even laugh at my mother's attempts at jokes. During these times, I could almost see why she'd married him. Strong jaw, broad shoulders, the kind of man who looked like he could protect you from the world. He couldn't protect us from himself. The second phase was the build-up. His jaw would clench at smaller things, a glass left on the counter, the TV too loud, my backpack in the wrong spot. He'd start drinking earlier, beer at 3 in the afternoon instead of 5. My mother would flutter around him like a nervous bird, trying to smooth the edges before they became sharp enough to cut. Phase 3 was the explosion. I was 14 when he broke my rib. I'd gotten a B on a history test, not good enough for a Marine's daughter. Even a stepdaughter. The argument started at dinner and ended with me curled on my bedroom floor. Each breath a knife in my side. My mother drove me to the emergency room at 2 in the morning, coaching me the entire way. "You fell down the stairs. You're clumsy. You know that." "You fell down the stairs." The doctor, a young woman with kind eyes, looked at my mother, then at me, then back at my mother. She knew. I could see it in the way her lips pressed together, the careful way she documented everything. But I repeated the lie, and she had no proof. And Mark was a veteran with a Purple Heart, and who would believe me anyway? I started wearing long sleeves year-round after that. Teachers occasionally asked, especially during Virginia's humid summers, but I had excuses ready. Sensitive skin, religious reasons, self-conscious about my arms. They wanted to believe me because the alternative, actually doing something, was harder than looking away. By 15, I'd learned his patterns like a wildlife expert studying a predator. Thursday nights were the worst because that's when his veterans group met, and he always came home angry at the government, the VA, the world. Sundays were safest because he was tired from his Saturday benders. I scheduled my life around his moods, staying late at school, hiding in the library, volunteering for anything that kept me out of the house. "Why don't you fight back?" my friend Sarah asked once, seeing the finger-shaped bruises on my upper arm despite my careful concealment. How could I explain that fighting back made it worse, that the one time I'd pushed him away, he'd thrown me into the wall so hard it left a dent my mother covered with a family photo, that every defense was seen as defiance, and defiance was the greatest sin in Mark Ellison's house. When I was 17, I made the mistake of having a boyfriend. Tyler was sweet, gentle, everything Mark wasn't. When Mark found out, he didn't hit me. Instead, he sat Tyler down in our living room and cleaned his service pistol while explaining what happens to boys who take advantage of young girls. Tyler never called again. "It's for your protection," my mother said that night, bringing ice for my swollen wrist. Mark had grabbed it talking to me afterward. "He just wants what's best for you." I stared at her. This woman who'd once been strong enough to raise me alone for 13 years, and realized she was gone. The mother I'd known had been replaced by this hollow ghost who spoke in Mark's words, saw through Mark's eyes, existed only as an extension of Mark's will. College wasn't an option. Mark said we couldn't afford it, though he somehow afforded a new truck that year, but I fought for nursing school, sold it as practical, a way to contribute to the household. The real reason was 12-hour shifts and eventual financial independence. Every paycheck, I skimmed what I could, hiding cash in places he'd never look, inside tampon boxes, taped under drawers, sewn into old stuffed animals. 3 years. 3 years of saving, planning, waiting. 3 years of documenting injuries in journals hidden at work, taking photos when bruises were fresh, building a case I might never be brave enough to present. 3 years of watching other families at the hospital, normal families who hugged without flinching, who laughed without looking over their shoulders. The memories felt like stones in my chest, each one adding weight until sometimes I couldn't breathe. But they also felt like fuel, burning slow and steady, keeping the promise alive. One day, I would leave. One day, I would be free. One day had become tomorrow. And tomorrow, finally, was here. The apartment key felt like freedom in my pocket, cold metal that burned with possibility. I'd signed the lease during my lunch break 3 days ago, my hands shaking so badly the property manager asked if I was all right. Just excited, I'd told her, forcing a smile. She had no idea that those papers represented 14 years of planning condensed into a single signature. It wasn't much, a studio apartment 4 blocks from St. Laura Medical Center, barely 500 square feet with a kitchen so small you could touch both walls at once. But it had a deadbolt, a chain lock, a peephole, and most importantly, Mark didn't have the key. I'd been careful, so careful. The apartment was listed under N. Brooks, not Natalie. I'd used the hospital as my reference. Not home. Paid the deposit and first month's rent in cash pulled from 12 different hiding spots. Left no paper trail that could lead back to the house on Maple Street. My plan was simple: pack tonight after my shift while Mark was passed out drunk. Leave at 5 in the morning before he woke up. 1 trip, 1 carload. Gone before he knew what happened. I'd already moved the essential documents, birth certificate, social security card, passport, to a locker at work. Tonight was just clothes and the few possessions that mattered. I should have known better than to think anything in that house could be simple. When I got home from my shift at 9:45 that evening, Mark was waiting in my room, not drunk, stone cold sober, which was infinitely worse. He sat on my bed, my suitcase open beside him, my carefully folded scrubs scattered across the floor. Going somewhere. The words were quiet, conversational even, but I heard the violence underneath, coiled and ready. "I was organizing," I said, surprised at how steady my voice sounded. "Spring cleaning. In October." He stood slowly, and I fought the instinct to step backward, never show fear, never show weakness. But God, he seemed bigger in my small room, filling the space between me and the door. "You think I'm stupid, Natalie." He picked up one of my shirts, examining it like evidence. "Think I haven't noticed you sneaking around working extra shifts, coming home later and later. I told you, the hospital needs... Don't. The word cracked like a whip. Don't lie to me. He moved closer, and I smelled his cologne, the expensive stuff he wore to make people think he was civilized. It made my stomach turn. Your mother might be blind, but I see everything in this house. Every thing. Each word was punctuated by a step forward, backing me against my dresser, including the rental application you printed at 3 in the morning last month. My heart stopped. I deleted the browser history, cleared the cache. How did he... The printer keeps a memory log, he said, reading my confusion. Surprised they didn't teach you that in nursing school. His hand came up, and I flinched, but he only tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. The gesture would have looked gentle to anyone watching, but his fingers pressed too hard, a warning disguised as affection. You're not going anywhere, he said softly. This is your home. We're your family, and family stays together. I'm 27 years old, I heard myself say. I can't live here forever. His face changed then, the mask slipping to show the monster underneath. You'll live here as long as I say you do. You owe me that much. I don't owe you anything. The words escaped before I could stop them. 14 years of suppressed rage condensed into 5 syllables. The silence that followed felt like the pause between lightning and thunder, inevitable destruction approaching at the speed of sound. His backhand caught me across the cheek, snapping my head sideways. I tasted copper as my teeth cut into my lip. I raised you, he snarled, grabbing my shoulders and shaking me. Fed you, clothed you, kept a roof over your ungrateful head, and this is how you repay me by sneaking off in the night like a thief. He threw me sideways, and I caught myself on the desk, sending papers flying. My laptop crashed to the floor. You're nothing without me, he continued, advancing again. Nothing. Who else would want you damaged goods? Weak? Pathetic. Each word was a blow, but something had shifted inside me. Maybe it was the key in my pocket. Maybe it was 3 years of watching families at the hospital who didn't live in fear. Maybe I was just too tired to be afraid anymore. I straightened, meeting his eyes. You're right. I am damaged. You made sure of that. But I'm leaving anyway. The second blow knocked me into the wall. Stars exploded across my vision. You're not leaving! He grabbed my suitcase, throwing it against the window so hard the glass cracked. You will never leave this house. My mother appeared in the doorway, ghost pale and trembling. Mark, please, get out, he roared, and she fled like a sparrow from a hawk. He turned back to me, chest heaving, and I saw it then, not just anger, but fear. He was afraid of losing control, afraid of me leaving, afraid of being exposed for what he really was. Tomorrow morning, I said, blood dripping from my lip onto my scrubs. I'm walking out that door, and you're going to let me. His laugh was ugly, fractured. Or what you'll call the police, with what proof you think they'll believe you over a decorated veteran. He kicked my clothes across the floor, stomped on my laptop, tore my nursing certificates from the wall, but I stood still, letting him rage, because I'd already won. He just didn't know it yet. The first real punch came when I bent to pick up my scattered clothes. Mark's fist connected with my ribs, driving the air from my lungs in a violent rush. I dropped to my knees, gasping, black spots dancing at the edges of my vision. Before I could recover, his hand tangled in my hair, yanking my head back. You want to leave. He dragged me toward the door, my knees scraping against the carpet. Let's see how far you get. He threw me into the hallway. My shoulder hit the wall hard, and I heard something crack, either the drywall or my collarbone. I couldn't tell which. Pain radiated down my arm in waves. Get up. I struggled to my feet, using the wall for support. My mother stood at the end of the hallway, hands pressed to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Useless. Always useless. I said get up. His boot caught me in the stomach. I doubled over, retching, bile burning my throat. The carpet felt rough against my palms as I tried to crawl away, but there was nowhere to go. This hallway had been my prison for 14 years, same beige walls, same family photos watching my destruction, same silence from my mother. Mark grabbed my ankle, pulling me back. "You think you're strong enough to make it on your own? You can't even stand up to me." He was right about one thing. Physically, I couldn't match him. 6'2", 200 pounds of muscle maintained by obsessive gym sessions and barely contained rage. But as he lifted his fist again, I remembered something else. The camera. 3 months ago, after a particularly bad night, I'd installed a small security camera in my room, hidden in the smoke detector, invisible unless you knew where to look. It was supposed to be for peace of mind, evidence if things got worse. I'd almost forgotten about it, but it was recording. Right now, it was recording everything. "Go ahead," I said, spitting blood onto the carpet. "Hit me again." Something in my voice made him pause. His fist remained raised, knuckles already split from the wall he'd punched earlier. "What?" I pushed myself up on my elbows, meeting his gaze. "Hit me again. Mark, harder this time. Make it count." Confusion flickered across his face, quickly replaced by rage. "You think this is a game?" "No, I think it's evidence." The words hung between us for a heartbeat. Then his fist came down like a hammer. The impact sent me sprawling. My head hit the corner of the dresser, and warmth spread across my scalp. Blood. Definitely blood. The room tilted, spun, settled into a nauseating rhythm. Through the ringing in my ears, I heard him destroying my room, throwing furniture, ripping clothes. 14 years of suppressed violence finally unleashed. "Evidence!" He laughed, wild and unhinged. "Who's going to believe you're nobody? A stupid girl who fell down the stairs, walked into a door, clumsy little Natalie, always hurting herself." He grabbed my face, fingers digging into my jaw, forcing me to look at him. This close, I could see the broken blood vessels in his eyes, the gray in his stubble, the scar that cut through his left eyebrow, the face of my nightmare, my warden, my stepfather. "Your mother will back me up," he said. "She always does. And even if she didn't, you think the cops care I'm a veteran. I served this country. I have friends in the department. You're just another hysterical woman trying to destroy a good man's reputation." He was probably right. The system had failed me before, would fail me again. But the camera was still recording, and I had one more card to play. "Mr. Henderson might care." Mark's grip loosened slightly. "What?" "Our neighbor. The retired cop who lives next door. The one whose bedroom window is 10 feet from mine." I smiled through the blood. "The one who's probably heard everything tonight?" It was a bluff. Henderson was nearly deaf, probably asleep with his hearing aids out. But Mark didn't know that. His face went pale, then red, then purple with rage. "You little—" The final blow was devastating. His fist connected with my temple, and the world exploded into white light. Then darkness. I felt myself falling, seemed to fall forever, dimly aware of my mother screaming somewhere far away. The last thing I saw before unconsciousness took me was the small red light in my smoke detector, steady and constant, recording everything. My silent witness. My salvation. When I woke up hours later, dawn was breaking through my cracked window. My room was destroyed, furniture overturned, clothes shredded, papers scattered like snow. My mother sat beside me, pressing a cold washcloth to my head. "He's asleep," she whispered, "drank himself unconscious." I tried to sit up, winced at the lightning bolt of pain through my skull. Everything hurt, ribs, shoulder, head, soul. But I was alive, and I had what I needed. "Mom," I croaked through swollen lips. "Go back to bed." "Natalie, I'm so sorry." "Go back to bed." She left, shoulders shaking with silent sobs, and I crawled to my dresser, Reached up with trembling fingers. Found the smoke detector. The memory card was tiny, barely bigger than my fingernail, but it held 14 years of vindication. I slipped it into my phone, made 3 copies to the cloud, then put the original in my pocket next to my apartment key. Mark thought he'd won, thought he'd beaten me into submission one more time, but he'd actually given me exactly what I needed: proof. Undeniable, recorded, time-stamped proof. Tomorrow had become today, and today, everything would change. The bathroom mirror showed me a stranger, left eye swollen shut, lip split in 2 places, dried blood matted in my hair. I looked like a victim, but victims didn't have plans, and I had been planning for 3 months. I cleaned myself methodically, each movement precise despite the pain. Shower to wash away the blood, concealer for the worst of the bruising, hair down to hide the gash on my scalp. By 6:30 in the morning, I almost looked human again, human enough to do what needed to be done. Mark was still unconscious on the couch, one arm dangling toward the floor where an empty vodka bottle lay on its side. My mother was nowhere to be seen, probably locked in their bedroom, pretending none of this had happened. The house felt like a tomb, silent except for Mark's ragged snoring. I moved through the rooms like a ghost, gathering what I needed. My laptop was destroyed, but I had my phone. My clothes were ruined, but I had scrubs at work. Everything else was just stuff, and stuff could be replaced. In the kitchen, I opened my phone and pulled up the video. 2 hours and 17 minutes of footage. The camera had captured everything. Every blow, every threat, every moment of his rage. The quality was crystal clear, the audio unmistakable. His face, his voice, his fists. All of it. I opened my email and typed 3 addresses. The first was the local police department's domestic violence unit. I'd researched the email after my last hospital shift, memorizing it just in case. Subject line: evidence of ongoing domestic abuse, urgent. The second was St. Laura Medical Center's Human Resources Department. They needed to know why I might be absent, why I might need protection at work. Subject line: documentation of injuries, employee safety concern. The third was Mr. Henderson. Robert Henderson had lived next door for 15 years, 71 years old, 30 years with the police force, 10 years retired. He walked his ancient beagle every morning at 7 sharp, rain or shine. His wife brought us cookies every Christmas, and he always asked how I was doing in that way that suggested he knew the answer wasn't good. I'd never asked him for help before, but I'd seen his old service photos, heard his stories about putting bad guys away. He still had connections, still had influence, still believed in justice. The email to him was different, personal. Mr. Henderson, I need your help. The video attached shows what happened last night, but it's been happening for 14 years. I'm leaving today. He won't let me go willingly. If you hear anything from the house after 10 this morning, please watch this video before calling anyone. I trust you to do the right thing. Natalie. I attached the video to all 3 emails but didn't hit send. Not yet. Timing was everything. Instead, I pulled up a 4th email. This one to Mark's employer, Diamond Logistics. He'd been warehouse supervisor there for 5 years, his veteran status and clean record making him look like the perfect employee. They had no idea who they really employed. I typed carefully, "This video shows Mark Ellison, your employee, committing felony assault. This occurred at 11:45 last night. I am his stepdaughter and the victim in the recording. I wanted you to be aware of the kind of man representing your company." I saved it to drafts, another card to play if needed. My phone showed 7:22. Mark usually woke around 9 on Sundays, later if he'd been drinking heavily. That gave me roughly 90 minutes. I went to the garage and found his toolbox, the one he'd forbidden me to touch, that contained the man's tools I couldn't possibly understand. I pulled out a wrench and walked to his truck. It took me 12 minutes to remove the spark plugs, YouTube University finally paying off. Without them, the engine would crank but never start. He'd be trapped here when the police came. back inside. I hid the spark plugs in the garbage disposal, then returned to my destroyed room. Among the wreckage, I found my old teddy bear, the one my real father had given me before he died when I was 2. Mark had tried to throw it away dozens of times, but I'd always rescued it. Now it lay torn in half, stuffing spilling like cotton blood. I picked it up gently, cradling both pieces. Inside the ripped seam was $800 in carefully folded 20s, part of my escape fund. At least he hadn't found that. 8:45, time to prepare the final phase. I set my phone on the kitchen counter, the 3 emails ready to send with a single tap. Then I pulled out a piece of paper and wrote, "Mark, I recorded everything last night. The police, my employer, and Mr. Henderson all have copies. If you try to find me, if you contact me, if you come near me ever again, I'll press charges. This is your only warning. N." I left the note on the coffee table where he'd see it when he woke up. Then I gathered my purse, my phone, my apartment key, and the teddy bear's severed halves. 9:10. His breathing changed, becoming less deep. He'd wake soon. I walked to my mother's room and knocked softly. She opened the door, eyes red-rimmed and hollow. "I'm leaving," I said simply. She nodded, unable to meet my gaze. "I know. Come with me." The words surprised us both. After everything, after 14 years of her choosing him, I was still offering her a way out. "I can't," she whispered. "You can." "No." She looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw she was already gone. This is my life. I made my choice. I wanted to argue, to shake her, to make her see, but you can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. Then goodbye, Mom. I turned to leave, but her hand caught my wrist, gentle, nothing like Mark's grip. "Be safe," she breathed. "Be happy." I pulled away and walked back to the kitchen. 9:27. Mark would wake any moment. My finger hovered over the send button. 3 emails. 3 witnesses. 3 pieces of evidence that would destroy the careful image Mark Ellison had built. From the living room came a groan, the sound of him stirring. I hit send. The sound of Mark reading my note was a crescendo of destruction. First silence, then a sharp intake of breath, then the coffee table flipping over with a crash that shook the walls. "Natalie!" I stood in my ruined room, calmly packing what little remained salvageable into a garbage bag. My scrubs from the floor, a photo of my real father, the broken teddy bear. My hands were steady now, my heartbeat slow and measured like I was preparing for surgery. His footsteps thundered down the hallway. He appeared in my doorway, face purple with rage. The note crumpled in his fist. "You think you're clever." His voice was different now, lower, more dangerous. The mask was completely gone. "You think you've won." "I think I've documented assault and battery," I replied, not looking up from my packing. "I think Henderson's probably watching the video right now. I think your boss will see it when he checks his email tomorrow morning." He lunged forward, but stopped himself at the last second. Fists clenched so tight his knuckles went white. He was thinking now, calculating. The stupid girl he'd beaten for years had teeth, and he was trying to figure out how sharp they were. "You're bluffing." I pulled out my phone, showed him the sent folder. 3 emails. 3 timestamps. 9:28 His face went through a series of transformations. Rage to disbelief to something that might have been fear. "You can't do this to me," he said, voice dropping to almost a whisper. "I'm a veteran. I served this country. I have PTSD. And I have a traumatic brain injury from where you slammed my head into furniture last night," I countered. "The hospital documented 17 separate injuries over the past 5 years. Did you think they didn't keep records? Did you think nobody noticed?" He started pacing, running his hands through his hair. "Delete them. Delete the emails right now." "No." I said delete them. He grabbed for my phone, but I stepped back, holding it behind me. "Touch me again and I'll call 911 right now," I said. The video's already out there. Mark, it's over. That's when we heard it. A knock at the front door. 3 firm raps. Mark froze. I knew that knock. Everyone in the neighborhood knew that knock. It was Henderson's signature. 3 raps. Pause. 2 more. But this time, there were only 3. Don't answer it, Mark hissed. I moved toward the hallway, but he blocked my path. Move, I said. You're not answering that door. The knock came again, harder this time. Then Henderson's voice, loud and clear. Mark, Natalie, I know you're in there. I've seen the video. We need to talk. Mark's face went white. Henderson hadn't called the police yet. He was giving us a chance to handle this without sirens, without handcuffs, without the whole neighborhood watching. It was a courtesy. 1 cop to a veteran. Shit, Mark breathed. Then louder. Just a minute. He turned to me, and for the first time in 14 years, I saw real panic in his eyes. What do you want? I want to leave. That's all I've ever wanted. If I let you go, this isn't a negotiation. I'm leaving. The only question is whether you're going to jail today or not. Another knock. I'm coming in if nobody answers in 30 seconds. Henderson called. Natalie, if you need help, stay quiet. Mark grabbed my shoulders, but gently this time, desperately. Please, don't do this. We can work this out. I'll change. I'll get help. The same promises my mother had believed for 14 years. The same lies that had kept us trapped in this house. 15 seconds. Henderson's voice came again. Please, Mark begged. His hands were shaking now. I'll lose everything. My job, my reputation, everything. You should have thought of that before you beat a 13-year-old girl, I said, pulling away from his grip. Before you broke my rib at 14, before you gave me a concussion at 16, before you... 10 seconds. Mark stepped aside. I walked past him, down the hallway where my blood still stained the carpet, through the living room with its overturned furniture, to the front door. My hand on the deadbolt felt like touching freedom. Natalie, Mark called from behind me. If you open that door, what you'll beat me, kill me. You've already done your worst. Mark. And everyone's about to know it. I turned the deadbolt. 5 seconds. Wait, Mark said, and there was something broken in his voice now. Just wait. I paused, hand on the doorknob, not turning around. Your camera, he said slowly. You said it's been recording for 3 months. Ice flooded my veins. 3 months. 3 months of footage. Not just last night, but other nights. Other incidents. Things that would destroy him completely. Every second, I confirmed. Silence. Then the sound of him sitting down heavily on the couch. Open the door, he said quietly. I won't stop you. But I hesitated, because now Henderson was involved. And once that door opened, there would be no controlling what happened next. Time's up, Henderson announced. The doorknob turned from the outside. Henderson had a spare key from years ago when my mother had asked him to check on things while they were on vacation. The door opened slowly, revealing Robert Henderson in his old police windbreaker, face grim, hand resting on his hip where his service weapon used to sit. His eyes took in my battered face first, then Mark slumped on the couch, then the destroyed living room. Jesus Christ, he muttered. Then to me, you okay, kiddo? I'm okay now, I said. He nodded once, then looked at Mark. You and I need to have a conversation. I know my rights, Mark started. I'm not here as a cop, Henderson interrupted. I'm here as your neighbor, the neighbor who just watched a video of you nearly killing this young woman, the neighbor who's about to decide whether to call my friends at the precinct or give you one chance to do the right thing. Henderson pulled out his phone, and Mark's face drained of what little color remained. No, Henderson said, reading Mark's expression. I'm not calling them yet. I'm pulling up the video Natalie sent me. You're going to watch it with me. Every second. I don't need to. Sit down and shut up. Henderson's voice carried the authority of 30 years in uniform. You're going to watch what you did. The next 4 minutes were the longest of my life. Henderson held the phone so Mark had to see himself on that small screen, see his fist connecting with my face, see me crashing into furniture, hear his own voice screaming that I'd never leave. Mark tried to look away once, but Henderson grabbed his chin and forced him to watch. "That's attempted murder," Henderson said when it finished. "That head injury aggravated assault. Federal charges if they want to push it, given your military background and training." Mark's hands were shaking. "I was drunk. I have PTSD. I didn't mean—" "Stop." Henderson's voice cut through the excuses. "I served too. Korea, 68 to 70. Saw things that still wake me up at night. Never once laid a hand on my wife or kids." My mother appeared in the hallway then, ghost pale and trembling. She saw Henderson, saw me with my bag, saw Mark's defeated posture, and understood immediately what was happening. "Please," she whispered, "don't arrest him. He's sick. He needs help." Henderson looked at her with something between pity and disgust. "Where were you when he was beating your daughter?" She had no answer, just stood there, wringing her hands, tears streaming down her face. "Here's what's going to happen," Henderson announced. "Mark, you're going to get your keys and wallet. Nothing else. You're going to get in your truck." "It won't start," I interrupted. "I removed the spark plugs." Henderson looked at me with something like pride. "Smart girl. Then I'll drive you to the bus station. You're going to leave town. Today. Don't come back." "I live here," Mark protested. "My job. Your job's gone as soon as they see that video. Your reputation's gone. Your life here is over." Henderson stepped closer. "The only question is whether you leave in my car or in the back of a police cruiser. You can't just watch me." Henderson pulled out his phone again. "I've got Chief Morrison on speed dial. We play poker every Thursday. One call, and you're in handcuffs within 10 minutes. Domestic violence, assault and battery, attempted murder. With this video evidence, you're looking at 15 to 20 years. Mark looked at my mother, desperate. "Karen, tell him it's not like that." But my mother, for once in 14 years, said nothing. "I need time," Mark stammered, "to pack, to figure things out." "You've got 5 minutes to get your wallet," Henderson said. "Clock's ticking." Mark stood up, swaying slightly, then stumbled toward the bedroom. We heard drawers slamming, cursing, the sound of something breaking. Henderson turned to me. You got somewhere to go?" "An apartment. 4 blocks from the hospital." "Good. You need medical attention for that head." "I'm a nurse. I can—" "You're going to the ER. Document everything. Official records." His voice softened. "This is evidence, kiddo. Make it count." Mark returned with a duffel bag, trying to look dignified despite his defeat. "This is kidnapping," he said. "False imprisonment. I'll sue." "Try it," Henderson replied. "I'd love to show that video in court." They moved toward the door, Mark dragging his feet like a condemned man. At the threshold, he turned back to look at me one last time. "You destroyed everything," he said. "No," I replied. "You did that yourself. I just recorded it." Henderson grabbed Mark's arm and steered him outside. Through the window, I watched them get into Henderson's old Crown Victoria, Mark in the back seat like a criminal. As they drove away, I saw curtains twitch in windows up and down the street. The neighbors had been watching. They'd probably been watching for years. My mother stood in the ruins of her living room, looking lost. "What am I supposed to do now?" she asked. "Whatever you want," I said. "For the first time in 14 years, you can do whatever you want. He'll come back." "No, he won't. Because if he does, I'll send that video to every news station in the state, every veterans organization, every person he's ever known. He knows that." I picked up my bag, the broken teddy bear tucked safely inside. My apartment key felt warm in my pocket. "Where are you going?" she asked. "Home," I said. "My real home." "Natalie, wait." But I was already walking out the door. Police sirens sounded in the distance. Someone had called them after all. Maybe Henderson, making sure there was an official record. Maybe a neighbor who'd heard the commotion. It didn't matter. I walked down the driveway. I'd walked 10,000 times, past the mailbox Mark had punched during one of his rages, past the fence he'd made me paint last summer in 100-degree heat. Each step took me further from the house that had been my prison, closer to the apartment that would be my sanctuary. My phone buzzed. A text from Henderson. He's on a bus to Richmond. Made it clear what happens if he comes back. You did good, kiddo. Your dad would be proud. My dad, my real dad, who died before he could protect me from any of this. I typed back, thank you. Another buzz, this time from an unknown number. I knew without looking it was Mark, probably from the bus station. This isn't over. I deleted it without responding and blocked the number. Then I called the domestic violence unit and left a message about filing a formal restraining order first thing Monday morning. It was over, whether he accepted it or not. It was over. The studio apartment was exactly as I'd left it 3 days ago, empty except for an air mattress and 2 boxes of essentials I'd smuggled there over the past week. Sunlight streamed through the single window, painting golden rectangles on the hardwood floor. No family photos, no military memorabilia, no whiskey bottles hidden behind couch cushions. Just clean, empty space waiting to be filled with a life I'd choose myself. I set my bag down and immediately went to the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back at me was unrecognizable, face swollen and bruised, lip split, one eye completely shut. But she was smiling. For the first time in 14 years, genuinely smiling. The ER visit took 4 hours. Henderson had been right about documentation. The doctor, an older woman who'd seen too many cases like mine, photographed every bruise, cataloged every injury, ran a CT scan for the head trauma, mild concussion, 2 cracked ribs, extensive soft tissue damage. Nothing that wouldn't heal. There's a counselor who specializes in domestic violence survivors, she said, handing me a business card. Please call her. I took the card. Therapy. Something else Mark would have called weakness. But I was done measuring my life by his definitions. When I got back to my apartment at 6 that evening, there was a box outside my door. No note, but I recognized my mother's handwriting on the label. Inside were things from my room she must have salvaged, photos of my real father, my high school diploma, my nursing school graduation cap. At the bottom, carefully wrapped in tissue paper, was a new teddy bear, not a replacement for the one Mark destroyed, but something new, something untainted. I spent that first night on my air mattress, staring at the ceiling, jumping at every sound from the hallway. Freedom, I learned, could be terrifying when you'd been caged for so long. But when dawn came through my window, in my apartment, I felt something shift inside me. The fear was still there, might always be there, but it no longer owned me. 3 days later, Henderson texted, Richmond PD confirms he's still there. Got a job at a warehouse. Keeping tabs through a friend. You're safe. A week later, my mother called. The divorce papers were delivered to his workplace, she said, voice stronger than I'd heard it in years. I'm selling the house, moving in with my sister in Florida. Good for you, Mom. I'm sorry, she whispered, for everything, for not protecting you, for choosing him over you, for being a coward. I know, I said, because I did know, and maybe someday I'd forgive her, but not today. A month passed, then 2. The bruises faded, the ribs healed, the nightmares gradually became less frequent. I threw myself into work, picking up extra shifts not to escape, but because I loved my job. I was good at it. Caring for people, helping them heal, it gave me purpose beyond survival. 3 months later, I was grocery shopping when I saw them, a mother and teenage daughter. The girl had that look I knew too well, shoulders hunched, eyes downcast, long sleeves in summer weather. The mother was buying concealer. Lots of concealer. I followed them to the parking lot. Excuse me, I called out. They turned, wary. I pulled out 2 business cards, the domestic violence counselor and Henderson's number. I'm a nurse at St. Laura. These people can help. No questions asked, just, "Please take them." The mother started to refuse, but the daughter grabbed the cards, stuffing them deep in her pocket. Our eyes met, and I saw myself at 13, desperate for someone, anyone, to see what was happening. "It gets better," I told her. "I promise it gets better." 6 months after leaving, I got a letter forwarded from my mother's old address, Mark's handwriting. I threw it away, unopened. He had no words I needed to hear. A year passed. I furnished my apartment piece by piece, a real bed, a couch, a kitchen table where I ate meals in peace. I started therapy, joined a support group, learned that healing wasn't linear but spiral, circling back through trauma but rising higher each time. Henderson still checked in weekly. "Proud of you, kiddo," he'd say, and I'd cry every time because I'd never had a father figure who was actually proud of me. Today marks exactly 2 years since I walked out of that house. I'm writing this in my apartment, my home, while morning coffee brews and birds sing outside my window. The teddy bear my mother sent sits on a shelf next to a photo of my real father. My nursing credentials hang on the wall, unbroken and properly framed. I still have the video on multiple backup drives. Not because I'm afraid Mark will come back. The restraining order and Henderson's network have kept him away. I keep it as a reminder. Proof that it really happened. Proof that I survived. Proof that sometimes the victim becomes the victor, not through violence, but through truth. Last week, I got promoted to charge nurse. My colleagues threw a small party, and when they asked me to give a speech, I said simply, 2 years ago, I couldn't imagine having a future. Now I can't imagine not having one. They applauded, not knowing the weight of those words. My name is Natalie Brooks. I am 29 years old. I am a survivor, a nurse, a woman who learned that freedom isn't just the absence of chains, but the presence of choice. Every morning, I choose to get up. I choose to heal. I choose to help others. I choose to live. And that choice, that beautiful, terrifying, liberating choice, makes all the difference. The scar above my left eyebrow, the one Mark's ring left that last night, has faded to a thin silver line. Sometimes I trace it with my finger, this permanent reminder of the night I fought back with the most powerful weapon I had, the truth. I'm still not whole. Maybe I'll never be, but I'm free, and that's enough. It's more than enough. It's everything. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where in the world you're hearing this. Please drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Your experiences and perspectives matter, and together we can build a community of survivors and supporters. Remember, you're never alone.